Today, we're going to go further into the property sector and actually look at what makes property easy. So I've invited two guests along here today, Christopher Nichols and Anne-Marie Blackler. Two are Prestige Private Finance's top mortgage advisors. Not only are they mortgage advisors, they've had a long-standing history in the property sector. So we're going to delve into their backgrounds, their industry experiences, and what led them to become mortgage brokers. So what actually brought you into the property industry to start with? What appealed to you?
Oh, I loved interior design. I've always loved architecture, and I started in Pimlico initially, and then I moved from Pimlico to South Kensington, and that's pretty much where my career took off. And the buildings there are stunning. They're all period conversions, beautiful high ceilings. It's basically the London dream, pretty much.
Like you got a lot of passion for it.
Yeah, so exactly. So that's basically sort of what drew me in. And I'm also like a really people-based person. So, I like meeting people, talking to them, helping them. So,
it
kind of
ticks all the boxes.
Yeah, worked for me, yeah.
Fantastic. And you, Christopher, tell us about your journey into the industry.
Well, I'd love to go with the classic absolute love of property and design and whatever else that would get you a spot on whatever it is, a place in the sun or location. But actually, my journey to end up in the world of property was quite simply that I was playing headers and volleys one summer with my schoolmates, and I'd done an extra year at university to go and spend a year living in Italy. So by the time we got back and I needed to find myself a job, most people had already got one back in the summer of 2006 or whatever this was.
Wow.
And a very good mate of mine, name check Josh Woods, he had a little branded Mini, and I simply asked him, where'd you get that from? And he was like, it's an estate agency job I just got after uni. And so I simply sent my CV into that one. It was the only job I've ever applied for and got. And there we go. So that started in the summer of 2006. I very quickly actually quite enjoyed the world of property. I think it was probably an enjoyment of sales as much as it was property, and I mean that in the nice people-centric version of it, not the sort of cutthroat and slightly win at all costs version, which I don't think is particularly beneficial to anyone, and was often a flash in the pan if you look back at those sort of people. I think the era of sort of poor advice and putting your result in front of everything else is something that died out quite a long time ago, and thankfully is not really a part of. You'd hope not really a part of a estate agency anymore, but you would absolutely hope is no longer a part of mortgage advice as well, and would certainly not be something that that I or I think any one of us here would do. I think our approach in terms of a brokerage and in terms of what we do with clients is one of a lot of very learned experience, but hopefully a very mutual, very mutual element of almost just some kindness to it. The world of giving advice to people is actually a really nice thing to be able to do. And I think that's the bit I enjoy the most, is probably advice over anything else. I left the rather large branded Mini agency in 2014 and went and ran.
How many years you did?
I did 8 years there. I'm sure everyone would really like to see Anne-Marie and I, who did work at the same company, sit here and bicker about figures and who did the best. But I probably had another 3 years.
I did not talk about what I did at that company.
I had another 3 or 4 years to put money in my pocket,
didn't I? Yeah, you left, I think, maybe 2 or 3 years. I think 2011 I joined, so...
Yeah, I was out in 2014, I think. 2014, I went and ran a couple of agencies for another...
Was Anne-Marie on the board at the time, or where were you? Because obviously you don't care about figures and commission.
I don't care about figures, so no, I wouldn't have remembered that, but I was definitely on top. The route into mortgages was, again, similar to as Anne-Marie said. You look at where you are, you look at what further, what sort of further pathway there is to advance and to be able to do more and accomplish more in your own life. And quite simply, there wasn't a lot going on in front. The company was also going through an element of being sold into a larger company, and you could sort of see things changing on that side as well. And it was, I think, Christmas of 2016 where I was meeting up with a couple of friends on Northcote Road and had a couple of quick Christmas beers with David Jackson, and we formulated a a plan. There was some really, it was very good timing. It was lucky timing on my side to have such an opportunity drop into my lap. And as such, from that moment, that was probably when the world of prestige private finance really started to pick up pace.
Yeah, Prestige Private Finance's first trainee broker.
That's it. First trainee broker back in the day. I benefited from Jacko's famous industry-wide in-depth training, which I will love to this day, and certainly made me the man that I am. I've just returned to the world of Prestige Private Finance from an interspersement at another very large corporate broker, which again I really enjoyed. And a big shout out to everyone that I met there. They are absolutely tremendous people. But it is actually terrific to come back into the self-employed environment that we have here, to be able to really, really take client care to the next level, to be so involved with that client's journey, with the advice that you're giving them, and the relationship that you build with people is so much stronger when it really is your name or our names above the door. You know, everything that you do for these clients and all of their recommendations of friends and family to you, it is your work, and it's
welcome
a lovely
home,
opportunity.
Chris. That's all I can say.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I mean, you know, having gone through similar things myself, you know, that transition from leaving the larger corporate with the pressures that come with it to actually taking charge of the destiny and your attention to detail, your name's above the door, and that's probably one of the biggest ethos for us, is actually to take that with you, but just go the extra mile and actually care for it. So just on that, Anne-Marie, what are the main traits you could take away from your time as an estate agent in even personal life and into your current
my current role? I would say, well, it's dealing with people, and I think the most important part of my job, both as an estate agent and as a broker, is the ability to listen to your client and to really understand what that particular client wants. Because I mean, sometimes at first they may not say exactly what they need, or they'll tell you a few snippets and then, you know, question like, oh, why do you want to do that? And, oh, is it because of X? And, you know, and then they'll open up a bit more and they'll tell you a bit more. And then each thing that they tell you helps you understand the best path for them. So I would say listening to your clients and trying to understand what your clients want. Those are the two most, I think, important things for me.
Okay. How about you?
Yeah, that's what Anne-Marie's saying, and that is absolutely spot on. But you can't build a relationship like that with a client unless they really, really trust you and they've really bought into you. And your ability to give the best advice to people and to get them to open up and to really trust you with a lot of their personal information is because your relationship building is good. And like we say, it does formulate that. It does formulate that trust. The more information and the more you get to know your client, the better the advice you give them as well. So your ability to make those relationships with people and to get them to enjoy is a funny word about applying for a mortgage, but to be warm and an element of joviality into the advice process means that the client themselves is going to get the best result too. If it's a very binary, you probably would use the word corporate environment in terms of bog standard question and answers and no real getting to know each other, the chances are that what comes out the other end, it may be pretty much there. You might get 80-90% of the way, but you might not be perfect, and you probably haven't touched on all the elements of taking a mortgage and moving forward with any decisions you've got to make. It can replicate across mortgages and across the property transaction itself. You know, within agency, it was much more about helping people come to a decision and giving them a bit more advice about what is or isn't possible. That bit within the world of mortgages is often quite swift to get to. Those factors are relatively limiting, and they're all to do with what a lender's criteria are. So you're not going to move around.
It's a lot more factual, isn't it?
It's a lot more factual on that side, yeah. Whereas when you're in the world of property, you need someone with you need someone to very kindly be able to tell you if you are routinely looking at flats that you're never going to buy.
Have you got any good stories of where you have actually put a deal together and actually listened to the client and actually thought, actually, I gave some really good advice there and found the property, or anything that sort of springs to mind at all?
God, I'll try and remember some of the some of the better ones. I think when it comes from your a bit more local knowledge, might be that you would have dealt with someone for a bit of time, and you are, like you say, you're really learning what they want and maybe family elements or such, and it would be you that would then maybe even recommend a different part of town where they are going to get what they're going to look for. I remember showing a really just delightful Irish guy and his family so many houses in the area that we worked in. Mine was Chelsea and Anne-Marie, South Kent. So apart from a couple of streets, you weren't going to get much of a garden. And you could end up showing really expensive houses to people that it would just never, it was physically impossible for them to tick a box. And the chap was so nice. He'd never been to Barnes. I can remember saying just on a Saturday, when you go and have a look at it, like it's a wonderful part of town. You're a little bit further out, but from what you're telling me, that is what you're going to buy. I looped him in with a colleague that lived down there and could give some advice. And although again it didn't actually benefit me financially whatsoever, it was one of those where it was the perfect place to live. So a lot of it is listening to someone and giving them advice that's going to help them come to a decision quickly.
So how does that feel? I mean, obviously being a mortgage broker, long to buying in the UK, we could sort of help them, but obviously you guys work your sort of patches, and yes, you could go out of it a bit, but how does it feel when you've spent a lot of time educating them on the area, then they decide to go off into Barnes and Fulham where they could get more for the book? I mean,
no, but that's great, because, I mean, we used to cross-sell anyway, didn't we? So,
yeah.
I mean, I spent, I think, pretty much most of my time from South Kensington to Earls Court to Fulham I mean, people would come expecting to be able to buy sort of a palatial place for around £1 million, for example. And I mean, the fact of the matter was that they couldn't. And then you'd understand what they wanted. They wanted a larger property. Then you'd show them other areas where they could get more for their money. So, I mean, I would say it didn't matter where people bought. I think it felt lovely to actually help people achieve their property goals. So just for someone to, they came to you, you showed them some properties in one area, and maybe they bought with you, or maybe they bought with somebody else. But the thing is, they would always, people would come back, I think, once you've been there long enough and they were selling and upsizing or downsizing or getting pied à terre, they might reach out to you again. Or you'd hear like, their friend would give you a call and say, oh, you've been recommended to me, which is, it was a nice feeling to have. And I'd say it's the same with mortgages. You'd help someone, buy their first home. And some people come to you and, their credit may be really difficult to do. They may have been turned down by other brokers, or they've come to you and they've only got 1 year's of accounts and they've been told by other people they can't buy anything. And you say, look, don't worry. I'll try and find you. I'll try and make this happen for you. And then when you do, they're so grateful. And I think those little moments are the moments that you think, yeah, it's really nice to be a broker, isn't it?
I think what you're describing in that is taking the time to put together a case that the monetary value of it may not be any greater than something that you could do in the equivalent of an hour or two's work. But you're digging into it, you're looking further into lenders' criteria, you're looking further into client scenarios, and you're probably going to place it possibly with a lender that isn't top of a high street chart, possibly a lender that the client might never have heard of, a building society here or there. And yes, its monetary value is like you say to yourself, no higher than having done a much quicker and easier deal with someone at the top of a sourcing chart. Yeah. But the fact you've put the effort in to do it and to genuinely break it down and really help the client, rather than just sort of passing it on very quickly to keep your volume levels up, shows a lot more care and a lot more diligence as to the client outcome. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the focus for me in everything that we put together at Prestige is the client outcome above everything. Yeah.
Okay. What's quite interesting I'm finding is that I'm asking questions about estate agency, and you're telling me about you're talking.
Sorry,
no, it's fine. It's just that it's quite interesting now. You're now a blend of the ex-estate agent with a mortgage broker's knowledge in there. So on that sort of theme, before you became a broker, what was your perception of where the broker fitted into the journey and the reality of now actually seeing where it does fit into it? Was the things that...
As in, what was the perception of what
the broker did, were they important, and actually now seeing it, is there anything there that you can actually see how essential it is, where before you probably didn't think it's so much.
Yeah, I'd certainly say you can. It was, I think, an estate agent, in the same way that a client would look at it, would be that you've heard of banks, you relatively know what a mortgage is, you understand that there are various terms available and interest rates.
Yeah.
But if you were to say which bank would do X, Y, or Z, or which lender would offer this person a mortgage but wouldn't this person, I would say a vast majority of people wouldn't understand the varying criterias and requirements of lenders. It might be that you could have walked down 5 or 6 high street banks and they've all said no, but if you'd bothered to go to the 7th one, they'd have said yes, and you would have fitted. And as an estate agent, with some honesty, I don't think we respected quite the importance of a decent mortgage broker within it.
I would say that I had a manager at the time, soon into my career with that firm, who he loved to talk about mortgages, and he would give like a mortgage class, so to speak, at like 2:00 and 2:00 just for our 2:00 call out, and he made it so complicated that or maybe my mind just didn't understand how, about stress testing, and he would do these things on the board, and then he'd ask you questions, and I was like, I have no idea what he just said. So there was a point where I just thought it was kind of like, not magic, but I was like, okay, I didn't talk to my clients about interest rates. I didn't say, I mean, I wouldn't talk about particular products and rates out there because that was beyond my advice and my knowledge.
Yep.
So I would just say, Dave, funny enough, used to be the person that I referred my mortgages to. So I would just say to my clients, look, have you got a broker? And they would say, yes, I've got someone, don't worry. And I'd be like, look, do you want a second opinion? Because I know a broker who's really, really good, and he's good at understanding people's sort of needs, and he quite often gets them the best rate. And I didn't have to talk about, oh, by the way, there's a rate that's on the market at X, and this is what the base rate's doing, and this is what interest rates are doing. I just understood that there was a guy called Dave who worked for our sort of sister company that was just very good at giving advice and getting mortgages for people. So that's basically what
made your life a lot easier.
Yeah. So for me, I just wanted to help the clients get the property.
And with any transaction like that, it is. You place trust in each person's own job role. You don't need to be interjecting yourself in being a lawyer, being a mortgage broker. Your role in that level was an estate agent. Your role was to bring two parties together that wanted to make a transaction. And then anyone doing the job with the sort of diligence that they should all show should also be recommending other parties that would help, that they could trust and that were professional enough so that the client would get the best service.
Yeah, I think, having set up my own business, years ago, I used to think I wanted to understand everything. I wanted to do the marketing. I wanted to do that. And then you sort of learn, actually, there's a reason why you delegate. There's a reason why you get the best marketer, you get the best salesperson or whatever. And that's how you put the team together. So, and that's one of my key points, I think. It's, if you want to find an interest rate, go on Google, you can find a best interest rate. It's actually dealing with the person, isn't it? So taking away all the good stuff you did as estate agents, again, so how has that world actually then benefited when you did get dropped in the deep end, I suppose, as a mortgage broker and was speaking to clients?
I would say what it benefited was from a selfish point of view, not to want to use that word at all, but we all need to accept that there's an element of selfish in everything. You go to work to try and attain the best results possible for yourself. No one should be showing up to their job and not trying to do the best for themselves. So there is a primary driver of selfish in anything. But what it did on my side was make it very clear to clients that not only as a broker would you more than likely know the area incredibly well that the client was buying in, but you would know the process so well too. You'd be able to advise them in how to speak to estate agents. It isn't a different language that they speak, but if you come in and you're saying the right
Sometimes
things,
it feels like it.
It can feel like it. It really can. If you come in and you're saying the right things, you have a little bit of guidance from your broker in how to present your offer, even the most simplistic of ways. If you can do that in certain competitive scenarios, the smallest of little tweaks to the way you're coming across to the estate agent and thus to their client might be the difference between you getting the house or not. You'll also have moments where, for the benefit of everyone, if I can give better advice during the transaction about what's going on and what's happening, and even down to a level of negotiation within the transaction itself, if you can end up keeping everything together when it's to the benefit of everyone, to the benefit of the buyer as well, it's not just about getting a deal done. That's most certainly not the driver here. The driver is to make sure that someone doesn't make a mistake through lack of advice or lack of knowledge in what's happening that ends up costing them the place that overall they would want to buy and would be really happy when they had bought. So allowing people a bit of comfort, and occasionally you might even describe it as a shoulder to cry on in this side of it during the transaction, is something that I think is, I would hope, really beneficial to the majority of clients.
Yeah, I agree with what Chris said.
So have you noticed a difference then with clients, how clients treat you as an estate agent versus the money guy?
No,
Have you
I mean,
not?
I find that the respect that was there when I was an estate agent is there as a mortgage broker. It's just one was talking about property and one is talking about their finances. Obviously, the financial aspect of things is a lot more personal.
Yes.
And
Yeah, for that reason, you probably get, I mean, it's my opinion, but I think you get a bit of trust because you are looking into the finances and stuff.
I agree. I think clients approach myself as a mortgage broker with a lot more trust than they did when I was an estate agent. There could be a few reasons for that. I'm no longer in my mid-20s and I don't drive around in a branded
in a mini, yeah.
which is inherently.
I must admit that. I mean that worked. That was against us.
Yeah, you were going in on a weaker footing straight away. Yeah, you had to be on your absolute A game to win trust there. Whereas when a client approaches you now, they're coming in a little bit more, a little warmer and a little more trusting from the start.
So onto the sort of dealing with the clients on the mortgage side of things. Again, what are the key points where you, from a I guess part of the sales perspective, you're able to give advice and stuff like that? Are there any good stories regardless to what good work you have done on the mortgage stuff where you've gone, I've just made a real big difference to that person?
Yeah.
There definitely are, and often it just comes down to listening. Like we've all said, we've come down to listening to a client and really getting them on side so that you know every minute bit of their personal detail. In terms of just getting a mortgage, with the business being incredibly London-centric, you will end up with a lot of brokers that quite simply won't deal with that client profile, won't understand some of the various criteria and concepts available to or from lenders that would be applicable to clients. And all a mortgage broker has to do to make an error is not know that someone would do it. You know,
that's the most important thing.
Absolutely. Not know that someone would do it, or even, I say even worse, in some cases even worse, end up with an incredibly obscure lender
that they didn't need to go to.
A load of money because you didn't realise that lender X, third on the rate sheet, would actually do it, even though you've only been in the country for 3 months. You know, these things are absolutely huge, and criteria does move, and I empathise with the fact that it doesn't, it's not rigid. It doesn't stay the same every day. It can change, and we've gone through a period of a lot of tumult and tumultuity within the industry that is going to affect these things. But if you don't know what you're doing, or you haven't listened to the client scenario enough, your effect on them is going to be financial, or it's going to be that they don't even get the house itself.
Yeah, criteria really is key, I would say, in so many instances. I mean, there are loads, and I'm sure you've got tons of them, of people where they've been turned away. It's always the case where someone couldn't get a mortgage on a house because of the type of construction. That was one of my more recent ones, where the house was stunning, and it was an EPC B home or something, but no lender wanted to touch it because of the type of construction. And also, I mean, the client had some complexities too to it, and their previous broker who was also quite a highbrow, corporate broker firm, they couldn't place it. And I tried everyone, and I didn't want to take no for an answer, because everyone was saying no, because the property had concrete construction, but it wasn't a 70s construction, like that stigma towards concrete. It was a brand new sort of brilliant EPC green home, and I challenged a couple of the lenders on it, and I ended up with, well, the case, I ended up with lending on it, and the client was over the moon, because they were about to go on a ridiculous rate with their previous lender, and I placed it with a high street lender. So, I mean, but it's one example of just, I think it's criteria, and also you can sometimes appeal things, and you can put a case together. You can make a case for someone, can't you? Yeah, and I love to make a case. If I can, if there is a situation where, the lender's saying no, but I'm saying, but are you sure? Because you've got X, and is that really the case? And then they might come back to you and go, well, okay, if they have X assets or whatever, you might be able to put something together. So I think criteria, and then having great relations with your business development managers, who are, the lenders, basically, having good contacts within the lending firms can really make the difference between a buyer getting a mortgage and maybe struggling and or going to a obscure lender that they didn't need to go to.
So what difference, so obviously for those who don't know, our contacts with all the major banks, they have what's called a business development manager. So what difference does that make, and how do you build those relationships?
It makes a huge difference. I speak to my business development managers like on a daily basis, several of them. Literally on speed dial, because, I would like to always talk through my cases before I put them through for an application, just to double check, everything is sound and it should work. But they tell you, as and when update criteria changes. So there may be a criteria change coming in, but you don't know about it. But HSBC changed their international policy. They announced that, but I knew about that, 2 months before that actually came into place, because of my business development manager. So, you get to know certain things, or they might say, oh, by the way, rates are going to go up tonight. They hadn't announced it, but, a certain lender might, give you sort of the inkling that something's going to happen. And it's just, I think it's important that you have a good relationship with them, because, they can be the make and break of a deal as well.
They can. Another aspect of forging a strong relationship with a lender and a business development manager does come down to the quality of the business you give them as well. As long as you've put the client together properly, as long as it does fit with them, if you're taking a very haphazard approach to doing it and just throwing it in and hoping for the best because you haven't taken the time to be diligent, your credibility with anyone that works at that lender or the BDM is going to be low, and the chances
they're not going to pick up your call.
The chances of them answering the phone to you to throw another god awful case in their direction that you could have probably checked yourself to see whether it would pass or not. You're not going to be on their favourites list. It all comes down to just how much effort and care you have to the client and the result.
So it's a people business, is that what
it is? Most certainly a people business. Yes.
So anyone's perception that I could get the best interest rate in the market, I found the best rate already, I don't need you. What would you say?
And we hear that. I hear that quite regularly.
There are going to be moments where someone has found the best interest rate.
Or don't worry. Oh, Lloyd's have just introduced X, and you're like, okay, great. And then 3 weeks later, everybody else reduces their rates, and that particular lender is still there. And the rates are actually cheaper with other lenders. Once they go direct to a bank, that bank's not going to call them up and go, oh, by the way, Tom, did you know we're just about to reduce our rates tomorrow? They're not going to do that. So you've got to then constantly look at that particular lender. Are they reducing rates? Are they reducing rates? And then if they do reduce rates, you got to then call them, cancel the rate down, try and get the new rate. Has that rate gone? It's just a real rigmarole, really, isn't it?
It is. It is. And there is a lot more There's a lot more to mortgage advice than just an interest
Right.
rate. Like we say, an interest rate is a list, and
Yeah, I
someone's
mean,
going to be
on that, I mean,
cheapest.
how long what's the sort of average time it takes from offer accepted to actually completion? 3 or 4 months?
I would say it's at least 3
So
months.
that's a
at the
long
moment,
time
yeah.
for things to fluctuate, isn't it?
Absolutely.
In this current market, yes, absolutely
And
it
a
is.
downward trend, there's probably a high chance that you'll be redoing the rate some way, shape or form. So
Absolutely.
like Anne-Marie says, just because of today I've recommended that, things could actually change.
Absolutely.
The bank's not going to tell you. So yeah.
And also, they might have found this unicorn amazing rate that, you might not have. And then they go, oh, can I have that rate? Oh, yes, sorry, that doesn't work for you because X, Y, and Z. But, they don't know the criteria of that lender.
Absolutely.
So they're kind of guessing. And then, you could have told them, by the way, that lender doesn't work for you because you told me your profile.
Found a building society.
Yeah.
Actually, they don't lend in London. It's
No.
like if you want to buy Northern Ireland, you're more than welcome.
You can buy Northern Ireland or a certain postcode in Cumbria. Yes, indeed.
Exactly. So I think
There is so much more to mortgages. Than
there
just an
really
interest
is.
rate.
It's not a one size fits all. I mean, I think lots of people come to me thinking they've got this sort of, preconceived notion of mortgages, and it's got to be a 25-year mortgage. And actually, I need a 5-year mortgage. And they say, this is what I want. And then, sometimes I'll say, okay, you want a 5-year fixed. Why? Oh, well, the other broker told me I should have one. And I was like, okay, great. Well, tell me a bit about your situation. And then when you speak to them and, turns out that they might want to sell the property in a couple of years, or they might want to, I don't know, go travelling or whatever,
Yep.
or they feel that interest rates are going to come down in a couple of years' time. Well, if you think they're going to come down, why are you going to fix in for 5 years? Oh, you might want to pay off some of your mortgage. Well, therefore, do you really want a 5-year mortgage? Because there are ERCs. And lots of people don't know these things, and they just come to you and say, this is what I want. Can you tell me what that costs? And you tell them what it costs, and then you ask them, why do they want that? And a lot of times they don't know. So I think it's just someone arranging a mortgage for themselves, or like, these 10-year mortgages, they fix in for 10 years, and then that's a very long time. I mean, I don't even know what's going to happen in.
It
Yeah,
has
exactly.
to suit the client's, needs and preferences.
Totally.
Absolutely so. And occasionally, without a little bit more questioning on why those perceived needs exist, or advice on how the lender is going to behave during the term, it may well be that is the right product.
Yeah,
for
might
them.
be.
And if it is, then absolutely, we would happily tell them that it's the right product.
But it's
at
good
the
to
same
talk
time,
it through,
you
isn't
should
it?
always talk through
Yeah.
your thinking and your reasoning with someone.
Yeah, I
Even
mean,
if you've just even if you found the best rate on the market, great, call us. We'll have a chat. Yes, that's the best rate for you. Go and get it. That could work for you. That doesn't cost you anything to have that conversation with us, does it? So, I mean, if anything, a conversation with a broker just backs up their ability to either get that particular product with whoever it is, or maybe they want something else that we might be able to arrange.
Then it is nice to build a long-standing relationship. One of the things that I've enjoyed the most in the world of mortgages is long-standing relationships with clients that you may talk to every 2, 3, 5 years, and help them through the journeys of moving and answer some questions over the maybe random times throughout the year. It's a very, very nice thing, and it's nice to know that someone should be on top of it, and a few months before the end of your current rate, give you a call, see how life is going on, ask you what your plans are. Ask you in a little bit more detail, but in also a nice friendly way. You would hope that you have built a relationship where you can catch up about various life milestones and whatever's going on, or a new job and whatever else. So it's something that you would hope that relationship stands for an awful lot above and beyond just the fact that
Just
you
the
could
one
Google
time,
one interest rate.
Yeah, I mean, I think for myself personally, when it comes to a rate renewal, you call a client and actually spend 80% of it having a chat about life and stuff, and then a quick chat about the mortgage and agree what the next steps are and move on.
It's great.
And because you've already got that relationship, you don't have to worry about explaining yourself and tell them how great you are, because you've already proved yourself previously, and then you have that sort of loyalty going forward. So,
and they're confident in the decision that they've made, which is also, I think, important. And also, we take away, it's like a hassle gone. It's like, oh, I need to sort my mortgage out. Talk to a broker. You go through everything, you arrange the mortgage, we monitor the rates. So they can just forget about it and then just focus on, buying the property or, whatever they're doing at the time.
I agree. I think we could probably do a further podcast on this one, but there is a world of like how much computer automation and whatnot will involve itself in various industries.
Okay, well, what's the perception of AI and how it's going to come into our industry?
I think mortgages are always going to be something that, and I did have some fear is the wrong word in this, because I think you need to be open to new technology, especially if it's to the benefit of people. But you look at it and you think, actually, the more I look into this and the more you see some of the more automated results play out, the benefit of a human interaction within this is actually far greater than maybe even I realised it was before all of this started to come into play and speak through it with people.
People like to deal with people.
They do. Yep. They do. They like to deal with people, and you just use the word confidence in that to be able to give someone the confidence in what they're doing and the security that they've touched on every I and crossed every T in terms of setting up their financing is hopefully a very, very big weight off their mind in what is an incredibly stressful time of it. We've just got to the end of a deal that had been horrendous on regard of the chain involved in it, and it you sometimes forget, because you do this with such high volumes over the course of a year. No one moves home 100 times a year, so you might have been involved in 100 transactions this year, but you forget that the stress that sometimes, not all the time, but quite often will go through people when they move house. Yeah. If you can do anything to alleviate that and take away a component of this and make sure that there are no worries from the client on that side of it, that they're absolutely happy, full of confidence, you've actually done quite a big thing to help them.
Yeah.
So long as AI writes your suitability letters, and
it can do that.
AI
bit,
is always
it
going to be a part of every industry, and it's going to get bigger. But I think ultimately, it's a mixture of AI and us.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it is.
So it's probably also that a lot of people dropping the AI into conversations, making out they're using it when actually it's still a people industry.
It's still a people industry.
Deals with it. So what sort of technology? I mean, obviously Chris got 2016, and you what technology have you seen improvements on since you started in this sector?
I would say certainly there's a lot more to do with client interaction. I think we're seeing a lot more of systems that will help you make sure you never miss giving a client a call about their upcoming rate. You would have systems that can help you monitor interest rates when you've put a client into a certain deal. There are a couple of systems out there that we can use in order to make sure that if a better product does come into play, that we don't miss it. I mean, a lot of these can still be done manually, absolutely so. But if we've got any process in the background that we can use just to alleviate any element of risk that you might miss it, why wouldn't
a lot of it is system based, isn't it? I guess. Yeah. I mean, like all of the keeping updated with rates. I mean, we've got that all in not a database, a system. So, I mean, without that system, we wouldn't.
Not having to do everything on paper for a lender.
I mean, I haven't personally dealt with doing things on paper. I know Dave has.
Oh God, been around a while.
You must still have done about 50% of your business paper-based.
I think Dave still does some of his business.
So if we get just sort of get into the final few points. So what advice would you give to people to be mortgage ready, or even at the start of the process of buying a property? What tips would you give somebody to get ready to move forward?
Well, make sure they've spoken to a broker to start with.
Yeah, number one and the most pivotal.
To get their finances in. Yeah, exactly. Just to make sure that they can afford what they want to buy. Yeah. And also not just the affordability thing, but I mean, having an agreement in principle is also quite helpful for an agent to help put that offer up in the best light possible. And also, sometimes you'll get an agreement in principle with someone and that person's got a missed payment or a default that they didn't even know about. People come to you and go, yeah, my credit's great. I make X, everything is brilliant. I'm fine. And then you go to do it and something might come up or it may not work.
Oh, that wasn't my fault. That doesn't count.
Yeah.
Well,
That loan. Oh, well, that's not important. But, undisclosed sort of credit commitments, etc. So I think it's really important to have spoken to someone about your finances.
Absolutely.
And just to have that agreement in principle in place is
so
really
should the broker be the first conversation someone has?
Absolutely.
Yeah, you should speak to a broker before you've been to see a flat.
Yeah.
You really should. Let's not be silly about it. The vast majority of people, probably no issue whatsoever.
Yeah.
And you could probably take it all the way to a formal offer and you'd be fine when it turned around. And really the only thing that a broker's gonna do for you is give you the right advice about how to set it up. But there's still a notable percentage of cases where someone will approach you and you do have to stop it and say, we have 3 or 4 points to address here that you weren't aware of. You may have been working in your incredibly well remunerated financial services job for 10 years, but you moved jobs 5 months ago. We're going to struggle to use those 2 annual bonus pay slips. Little things like that people wouldn't know. And I've had a case recently where, again, this is touching on technology, where a certain automated element of a mortgage brokerage, it just simply asks, as you input the data without any human interaction, it asks what your last 2 bonuses were. What it doesn't pick up on is the fact that your 2 bonuses were with 2 different companies.
Well, your 2 bonuses were in 2 different countries.
Yeah, exactly.
Half it's paid in stocks.
You've used your RSUs in there.
I've been promised that bonus and it's still discretionary.
Yep. And that's where, going back to the first thing we said, that's where building a relationship with someone and being able to know the questions to ask. A client and a buyer does not know the questions to ask themselves.
No.
And when you can do that and you can say to someone, right, there is an issue here, here is the solution, or here's what we need to do, or actually, do you know what, we might be a little ambitious here, but we could do it at this level, you are immediately saving people a lot of time, a lot of hassle, and do you know what? You're saving them the disappointment of having seen something that they really like and then being told they can't do it. Yeah. You might have the other element where it goes the other way. Yeah, someone's approached you to do X, and actually when you give them some genuine advice about not only their borrowing potential, but also how you would responsibly set up the mortgage over a certain length of time or a certain format that makes that house affordable for them, you could completely have changed the trajectory of someone's life just by having one conversation with them. And that's something that I think we should forever not forget within our job role, that the care and diligence that you provide in your advice has a genuinely large outcome on the bettering of people's lives.
So it's not just about an interest rate then?
It is not just about an interest rate for the next 2 years. No.
Okay, so I'm a first-time buyer. I've called you, so send me off with my list, to-do list. What are the main things I need to do?
The main things you need to do, and make sure that your bank statements, for me, make sure your bank statements are in the right format. With name and address on, we make sure that we've got the right pay slips. We make sure that they're inherently fairly basic things. Yeah. But you just have to go through what is a formula. Go through your list of what you need. Yeah. Just make sure there are no surprises in there.
You, Anne-Marie?
Yep. And I would say, having your credit sort of in check is always a good thing. So preferably to be within your overdraft, as in not in your overdraft. There are times, obviously, where you need to be, but some lenders don't always like that.
Certain lender does help in hand, especially once nice and tidy bank statements.
Absolutely. So I'd say having and no sort of surprise, sort of unexplained large transactions on bank statements, perhaps. And
one key thing's deposit.
Yeah, looking at that is the main thing
for a
as well.
First-time buyer, especially.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Where is it coming from? Yeah, we live
Not
we
crypto,
live in a,
hopefully, because
yep,
that seems to be
absolutely. Look, we live in
Although
a
some
world where
lenders will look at that.
yeah, they will.
getting there, but yeah.
We live in a world where we have to be incredibly diligent,
Yeah, we
and
do.
we have a responsibility to look further than just.
Yeah.
I mean, the crypto
having
thing is
mortgage
quite,
there.
that's just an example of another anomaly that
Yeah.
you wouldn't think of. Somebody's invested
course
there.
not.
They go, oh, no, banks don't like that because
It's
that
that
could be seen
person's
to be-
money.
Yeah.
They'd be shocked if you told them you can't actually use your own money in a certain format. Of course they would. But again, this is all coming back to the level of responsibility that we have when it comes down towards AML and that side of things. It is a serious issue, and with the more global world that we're in now, especially transacting business within London, you have to be very, very, very well aware of where the money came from. And lovely that it's been in your account for 6 weeks now, but what was it doing for the previous year?
Before,
Where is it from?
And which country? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not just
And is it gifted?
spot
or
on.
is it...
And you're not just asking questions for the sake of it. There will be nothing worse than a broker just sort of not fudging it through, but just not asking the right question, because the lawyer is going to ask that question. And that might be a day before exchange when everything is ready, everyone's ready to go. And because you didn't ask a question at the start about where the deposit was coming from, it has just hit,
And if you have the wrong solicitor, they'll even ask the question anyway when you have told the bank it's from a gifted deposit. So, actually on the educational side of things, making sure that, the buyer is using the right team, the best broker, the best estate agent, best solicitor who is going to set you up.
Yeah.
I mean, at this time when we're filming, the stamp duty holiday is about to finish. There'll be people out there, solicitors today, raising inquiries with 2 days to go. It's going to be ridiculous, isn't it? And but that's the way some of these companies do work. So, how does your tone differ for being mortgage ready for a home mover? How do you
in comparison to what?
A first-time buyer. So we're just saying about first.
Well, as much as you think, having bought a house once, that you are a seasoned professional in it, the answer is we might think you are, but you're probably not. You might have forgotten entirely about what it was like buying a house or moving. So there's a lot of things to talk about. In the mortgage world of moving house, of course, it's looking at where your current mortgage deal is, looking at how easy it is to pick it up and move it across. Does your scenario, and this does happen in some cases, does your scenario to move house still fit with your current lender?
Yeah.
What are we gonna look at doing?
It can be very similar because, again, typically if you're moving home, it's a life-changing event. Usually it's upsizing. If it's your first, you've bought and then you're going to buy again. And then again, it's back to affordability. Can you make that new home work? How much deposit do you have to put in there? I mean, can you port your mortgage and top it up? Do you meet the criteria for it? So again, the affordability factor affects things, I would say. Like the first time buyer.
Okay. And then just a bit of a left field. How about more buy-to-let investors?
Portfolio landlords.
Where do you find the difference in conversations there? Obviously a bit of a different, come from a different angle.
Well, you're certainly in a quieter market for the world of buy-to-let purchase, definitely so. But on that side of it, I'd say in the world of landlords at the moment, it's very, in many cases, it's quite hard for them actually to do anything.
So what are landlords saying at the moment? Obviously, with this increase in stamp and obviously all the
half the time, I think they're saying, "What can I sell it for?"
A lot of times
it's certainly not a comfortable position on their side whatsoever, and a lot of the conversation is now leading towards either, if it is a purchase, you buying it in a limited company,
transactional costs for like the fee, the lender's fee. I mean. Obviously you've got the interest only element too, so it is a different conversation.
Yeah, you're in a tough world if you're a buy-to-let landlord at the moment, definitely so. And it's one that has become a lot more complex. It's one that needs a huge amount of investigation into the client circumstance and what actually is the right recommendation for the client, because as lovely as an incredibly low interest rate might look, a 5% fee is probably not also the most attractive thing when you actually take it into account. You also do need to make sure that a client does speak to relevant people about their tax planning and the like. That's not our side of it to advise on that, but you might actually be in a position where you need to consider incorporating your current buy-to-let into a limited company. It's a big thing to do, of course. Absolutely, it's a massive decision, but in some
Take
cases,
the appropriate advice, and
absolutely take the appropriate
and
advice,
then we'll
and then
sort
look at it.
the
But
solutions.
yeah, in the world of a personal buy-to-let at the moment, if you are coming up for a remortgage, it's certainly a tougher world to pick that up and move it to another lender than it used to be. You've got a couple out there that are doing as much as they can to try and make it easy to move towards them, but even then, these stress testing and rental cover rates, they're not easy at all to get through at the moment. It's certainly a very, very tough time for
So you need a good broker to look
you.
after
Most certainly need a good broker for that side of things, yes.
And in all seriousness, there's a reason why that sector does feed into the broker market rather than being direct, because of the complexities to it. So, and it's a different, it's unregulated, but it's looked at in a different way, isn't it? And they all have weird bits that come out on criteria.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's quite a big minefield. So that's why I always think this
a
AI
very
thing,
big minefield.
yes, it's there, but it's not going to do all the solutions, is it? And,
No.
When you spend time out the industry, things do change quite quickly because you're immersed in it. You don't feel the changes as much, but you take a step back and it changes very quickly without you realising it.
Yeah, I'd say if you went back even 10 to 12 years, which I know is a long time, but I would say that would look a drastically different world in buy-to-let on many factors.
What do you love about Prestige?
What do you love
That's
about
what you want to
Prestige?
know,
This is what we
Dave.
want to
That's
know, David.
basic.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
what makes you different? What makes you stand out from the crowd?
Chris.
What makes me stand out from the crowd? Well, I would say I'm personable, certainly so, but I don't think there's anyone with our team that isn't personable. I think the strength of Prestige as a brokerage is in its
Okay, well,
start.
why shouldn't I go and use an online broker and just call up? Why should I use you, Chris, at Prestige?
Well, we don't just churn out mortgages.
Yeah.
I mean, some of these online brokerages, they're a free service. They, you go to them. I had one lender, one example recently. Someone buying, again in London, a flat, and they went to one of these online brokers, and they literally did four applications for different lenders, and they called me on the fourth one saying, look, I've got this one going through, but I don't hold much hope for it. And it was an ex-council, deck access property, and all four of those lenders were completely wrong. I placed it with one person, and they literally got the mortgage offer, within the week.
Yeah.
And he was just shocked. He just thought, how is that possible? But that person had gone to one of these, online broker firms who just went down the list. Oh, this is the cheapest. Oh, this is the next cheapest. Oh, this one. And by that time, you've wasted so much time.
You've wasted a lot of time.
And that poor client is thinking, oh God, is there
Emotional
something wrong with the property?
You're running out of enthusiasm.
Yeah, it's literally the make or
Sales
break
is a
of a
transfer
deal.
of enthusiasm.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, the biggest part of using a broker, and especially one like ourselves, is going to be that spending 15 to 20 minutes making a relationship, talking, and hopefully actually, not having a tediously dull 20-minute phone call with hopefully there's a little bit of joviality and a little bit of life in it. That 20-minute investment in your time is going to save you huge amounts of time, effort, and just
and they can't WhatsApp this online broker firm. I mean, so many people are WhatsApp me just all the time about various different parts of the process, or things that they're nervous about, or actually they've reduced the price, or things that you need to be sort of available to take that call or to take that message.
The strength of the relationship that they'll have with us is what will get them a better result.
I
Absolutely.
mean, I obviously get to get your reviews, your 5-star reviews when they come in, and what I do notice, it's not someone just ticking the boxes. People will write essays about how great the service was. So everything you're saying there does follow through, and when you get to the back end and have a happy client, and then they're willing to write an essay about how good you guys is, a testament to the work you do. So, well, thank you very much from me for all your hard work. I really do appreciate it, and so do your clients and Prestige, of course. I'd like to finish off with...
I don't know, Chris. What do you think?
I think my final point would be that we want to hear from people. Like we really do, even if it's the smallest of question. Every conversation we have doesn't have to end up with a mortgage application at the end of it. If someone just wants to give us a call, even if you just want to talk through a little bit of the property market or a little bit of the mortgage market, just give us a call and we would be over the moon to hear from you.